and gentlemen, we are here to kick off this next panel session, and I'll give you the title in a minute. But first of all, I have to say, because nobody said it all this morning, wow, this place is phenomenal. I saw it this morning. I didn't know whether I should be speaking or singing. Hello up there. How's the weather? It's an incredible venue, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Hesselhurst. I'm a news anchor and presenter with BBC World News, based in London. I'm based in London, but don't mistake me for being British. I'm not British, I'm Australian. So you can't blame Brexit on me. I just want to make that clear. Among several of the shows that I do, I also present my new show. I got my own new show. It only took 15 years at the BBC, but I've got it. It started this year. It's called Talking Business with Aaron Hesselhurst. Half an hour every day, Monday to Friday, 2:30 p.m. UK time. I'm giving a plug there. 2:30 p.m. UK time. You work it out where you are. Tune in on BBC World News. It's a lot of fun. I'm very excited and very honoured to be here with all of you today to talk about such an important initiative. Important, yes, for China. Important, yes, for Georgia and this wonderful region. But ladies and gentlemen, the facilitation of trade along the Belt and Road is in fact very important for our global economy. Look, we all know that the exchange of capital, the exchange of money, the exchange of goods and services across international borders represents a significant share of a country's economic output, of that country's gross domestic product, of its GDP. You know, you only have to look at those countries around the world that have had sustained growth and prosperity, because they are the ones who have opened their markets to trade and to investment. Think Singapore, think South Korea as two very good examples. So, needless to say, further economic integration and trade along the Belt and Road countries and the regions around those particular countries is absolutely essential for all of them to achieve sustainable development. And of course, for all of those countries to contribute to our global economy. We all know, everybody here I'm sure knows, of the enormous potential and the opportunities that are out there. Already a lot of good, actually a lot of great progress has been made. Steps have been taken by, well, countries in the region through things like regional and bilateral trade agreements. Georgia and China signing the FTA, a free trade agreement, which of course it also has a broader regional benefit by facilitating trade between Asia and Europe, as we've been hearing. Of course, this takes into account Georgia's FTAs with the EU and the EFTA, Turkey, CIS countries. You know, ladies and gentlemen, the revival of the Belt and Road trade is going to provide tremendous benefits for all of those participating countries. It will significantly cut transportation times, and of course that increases the reliability of transport. What it does is it reduces the costs of trade. And all of this means, well, it means a lot of things. All of this means the creation of new jobs, the development of value-added services. There'll be certainly new opportunities for the private business sector, and of course, increased social welfare. Now, saying all of that, achieving all of this enormous potential doesn't come without its challenges. Some very big ones, in fact. There is no doubt that the full economic potential of the Belt and Road countries is still vastly underutilized. So this is what we want to talk about over our next hour. with our friends up here on stage, who I will introduce to you very shortly. We want to look at the impact of the WTO, the World Trade Organization's Trade Facilitation Agreement, the role that it plays on trade development within this initiative. You know, well, I think we all know, the effective implementation of that agreement is very important to improve transparency and reduce the scope of corruption along the Belt and Road countries. We want to look at how we increase trade among all of those countries. What other instruments are out there that can be used? We want to look, I mentioned, at the regional and bilateral free trade agreements, because of those bilateral and free trade agreements, are they the answer to unlocking and developing regional trade, including, of course, and very importantly, the removal of trade barriers? What are the roles and the tools of the many international organizations out there supporting all of these countries to boost their trade? Something very importantly also is, how do we increase the private business sector's competitiveness? Because what is the answer? What's the answer to better integrate the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of local businesses into our global supply chain? And finally, and we did hear this from Mr. Gupta earlier this morning, but finally, who's going to dig deep? Who's going to cough up and pay for all of this? Because there is an awful lot of financing needed to support specific areas of international trade in developing countries, including things like agriculture and rural development, environmental protection, infrastructure, as we've been hearing. The list is vast. So, let's get cracking. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you our friends on stage, our panelists, who hopefully can give us some of the answers. So, first up, Dr. Abdel Aziz Hamad, from my left this is, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Abdel Aziz Hamad Al-Washig, who is the Assistant Secretary General for Political and Negotiation Affairs from the Gulf Cooperation Council. Do I have to prompt you? Next to Abdel is Ms. Dana Miga, who is the Deputy Minister of Finance of the Slovak Republic. Next to Dana, we've already met you, is Mr. Chan Kaming, Deputy Minister of Commerce of the People's Republic of China. Mr. Gennady Advalazi, the Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia, joins us. In fact, the man who put all of this together. Ask him how much sleep he's had in a week. Next to Gennady is Ms. Natalia Meykolska, the Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Ukraine. And last but not least, right, Yi, is Mr. Yi Chaozun, Deputy Director General of the World Trade Organization, ladies and gentlemen. So please thank our panelists for joining us. So what we're going to do, you've seen the format this morning, we're going to have a 4-minute presentation from each of our panelists about their vision on this topic. And then after that, we get into the nuts and bolts. We'll get into the Q&A, the questions. And I've told all of them, 4 minutes. I'm very strict timekeeper. 4 minutes only, so we get plenty of time for questions. Gennady, I think you're going to kick us off.
Thank you, Aaron, for this great moderation. And let me greet everyone, the audience. I would like to use this opportunity and thank all of you to come visit Georgia, because we have many foreign businesses as well as governments represented here on the highest level. And I really appreciate that the importance of this gathering has been increased since last time, and we see that the first time they organized Silk Road Forum, which was really very successful forum, brought another success to the second forum, which is entitled under the name Tbilisi Belt and Road Forum. This is really one of the important gatherings where we need to discuss and make important issues to be discussed, which considers trade facilitation, also energy, also transport and transit potentials that the countries engaged in Belt and Road are going to use. And also one of the important on this during 2 days will be the discussions on the business to business and the opportunities that lies in Georgia in terms of investment opportunities and what Georgia offers. So just this panel, which is one of the important panels and the direction, is the trade. Trade which is without trade and without removing barriers to trade, we cannot make anything to happen. The directions and sectors that I have mentioned, everything is related to trade. So if we don't have this smooth trade, if we don't remove the barriers to trade, then we cannot realize any transportation, any movement of goods. And that's why we are here. And the countries engaged in this initiative is one of the important directions is unimpeded trade. So trade without barriers. And what we do with that regard, and what Georgia has done to that regard, is that we have one of the liberal trade regimes, and we have one of the liberal trade policy, which includes the free trade agreements, which we have signed already with our member countries, and it has been mentioned by my Prime Minister during the first session, that we have a free trade agreement with Turkey, with the European Union, with CIS countries, with EFTA countries, and now, which has been announced today by the Deputy Minister of Commerce of China, we are going to enjoy also free trade agreement with China since 1st of January next year. So besides that, what Georgia is offering is, and why Georgia's trade regime is liberal, is that we have more than 80% of our nomenclature with zero duties. All of the products which fall under the 80% of the nomenclature are zero, which means we are very liberal. We allow all the goods from international markets to enter Georgia and enjoy the market. And also, as well as we, on Georgia's part, trying to liberalize trade with our counter parties, with counter countries, partner countries. So this is one of the important directions, and what we do with that regard is, and what is the real benefit out of it, is that, first of all, this is the benefit for the private sector. That brings the benefit for our business society. When they see that there is a removal of barriers to trade, then they're trying to use the opportunity which gives international trade. Another one is to make our businesses international, SMEs to be engaged in value chains, which also make and increases their competitiveness. And that's what we need, integration, economic integration. Belt and Road countries, when we are discussing the opportunities, first of all, this is not competition, this is the contribution by the countries of Belt and Road. That's why we have gathered today, that's why we have established this platform in this region to discuss the opportunities, how to make this region to trade without barriers, to make the trade much more smoother, and also Georgia to use as a platform for the regional countries to transit their goods, and also to use Georgia as a market which provides them opportunity to have access to the regional markets with whom Georgia enjoys the free trade agreements. With that, we're trying all our best. We are introducing the infrastructure development, which means that without infrastructure, you cannot transit the goods smoothly. So we are developing the infrastructure, and we have ambitious goal with that regard. We have announced, the government has announced that next 3 years we will be investing in hard infrastructure more than $3.5 billion USD, which is really one of the biggest investments from government, as well as also we are inviting the private sector to use this opportunity to invest in infrastructure and then use this infrastructure. So this is one of the directions, and we also try to support the SME development in our country in order to make the SMEs international, to increase their capacities and to use those opportunities which lies on those markets. So this is very briefly what Georgia is doing, and I'm pretty sure I will have more opportunity to be asked by questions and to provide more information about this.
You'll have plenty more opportunities. Now, I know you're all watching, and he went over, but he's the boss kind of, right? So I can't, but you guys aren't, so I'm going to be a lot stricter. Next up, Kaming, all yours.
尊敬的 Aaron Hesselhurst. Correct?
Hesselhurst, yeah, close enough.
Okay, good, thank you. 尊敬的阿维拉哲副部长，尊敬的米克尔斯卡亚副部长，尊敬的米格副部长，尊敬的阿努瓦谢格助理秘书长，尊敬的易小准副总干事，各位来宾、女士们、先生们，刚才在开幕式上，我向大家介绍了“一带一路”倡议的有关情况。接下来呢，我就愿意进一步就这个推进“一带一路”贸易畅通，与大家做一个交流。贸易畅通是共建“一带一路”的重点内容。今年以来，中国与沿线国家的贸易额近8000亿美元。推进“一带一路”贸易畅通，就是要发挥沿线国家的比较优势，促进经济要素的有序流动，资源高效配置，市场的深度融合，促进推动产业升级、经济发展、民生改善。这是顺应时代潮流，适应发展规律，符合各国人民的共同利益。为此呢，我们也倡议让各方携手起来，一是推动扩大开放，开创有利于开放发展的这个条件，深入推进贸易投资自由化、便利化，消除壁垒，推动构建公正、合理、透明的贸易规则体系。二是深化创新合作，创新贸易方式，培育贸易新的增长点，增强投资和贸易联动，释放合作潜力，促进贸易增长。三是践行包容性发展，优化这个贸易投资结构，促进投资贸易均衡发展，落实2030年可持续发展议程，推动构建人类命运共同体。未来15年，中国将进口24万亿美元的商品，吸收2万亿美元境外直接投资，对外投资将达到2万亿美元，这是中国发展带给世界的商机。中国将于明年11月举办首届中国国际进口博览会，这是中国主动向世界开放市场的一个非常重要的举措。我们热忱地欢迎包括格鲁吉亚和其他各国在座的朋友和旗舰参加这个博览会。我们将秉持开放透明的原则，继续与有意愿的国家和地区商建自贸区。刚才格鲁吉亚的副部长也提到，中国和格鲁吉亚自由贸易区协定将于明年1月1日生效，这将为中国和格鲁吉亚经贸合作开启一个新的航程。女士们、先生们，推进“一带一路”建设需要凝聚共识，共同行动。在新的起点上，我们愿意与各方一道携手推进贸易畅通，实现更大范围、更高水平、更深层次的开放合作，把“一带一路”的宏伟蓝图转化为各方的务实行动，推动全球贸易和世界经济联动发展，共同开创“一带一路”国际合作美好未来。谢谢大家。
Thank you. You gave us 12 seconds back. No, we like that. Natalia, it's all your turn now.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm really glad to be here. First of all, definitely Ukraine, for our country, to be the part of this initiative now is actually the issue of surviving. You know that due to the Russian war and trade aggression, Ukrainian economy suffered much. We lost 20% of our production capacities situated in the war region and the next Crimea. But what is most important, actually, Russian Federation ruined the traditional transit routes. So basically, the goods from Europe and from Ukraine normally moved to Caucasus countries and to Asia through the territory of Russian Federation. But the transit ban introduced almost 2 years ago actually affected not only Ukrainian economy and not only Ukrainian export, but it also affected the transit of goods from all the countries that use this route. And it also affected transportation, freight forwarding companies, etc. But what we say in Ukraine, we said that, you know, like nothing, if we just take a bad thing and turn it into a good thing, actually that's how we survive. Therefore, what we believe is that actually building a new transit routes, and the more we have, the more opportunities Ukrainian business would have. The more opportunities Ukrainian transportation companies and Ukrainian exporters would have, the better for our country the situation would be. Basically, Ukraine traditionally is, its geographical position makes us an ideal, I would say, manufacturing hub for producing goods and services and exporting them to Europe. The DCFTA working with the European Union brings its results. Our Prime Minister was talking about results from the last year, but results from this year is much more promising because we have an increase for the 9 months of, in terms of trade in goods for 24%. Sorry, that's trade in goods and services for 24%, but in trade in goods it's even more, it's 28%. So basically what we see is that Ukraine is working a lot with the European Union in terms of trade, but we see that actually Caucasus countries and Asian countries are biggest market for us. In our export strategy, which has been developed last year, we defined our market in focus. And what is for us very important, that almost all countries from the One Belt, One Road initiatives are the market in focus for Ukraine. So what we really are interested in doing, and our Prime Minister actually mentioned it in his speech, we are really keen in developing our infrastructure and developing actually Ukrainian ports in order to benefit from this initiative. We were talking a lot about free trade agreement, but in addition to Ukrainian agreement with the European Union, we also have a free trade agreement with EFTA member states, with Montenegro, with CIS countries. But recently, Ukraine has also entered into agreement with Canada, which makes, again, brings a lot of opportunities for business from Asia and Middle East in terms of investing into Ukraine for producing goods and bringing them to European Union, to Canada, and to some other countries. So we see that Ukraine's future lies in export-oriented economy, but not only in goods, but also in services. Because actually, One Belt, One Road initiative is not only about goods, it's also about services, transportation services, freight forwarding services, even ICT services, because we are living in a digital era, and I believe that ICT services and digitalization, that's also the thing that we need to talk about.
And we will. Thanks, Natalia. Dana, your turn.
Thank you very much. Hello to everyone here in this beautiful and magnificent place, Tbilisi National Theatre. It is really a big pleasure and honor for me to have been invited to this Tbilisi Belt and Road Forum. I actually prepared a little speech, and Aaron made me really so stressed, so I'm going to speak just like that. And I will refer to the speakers which pointed out certain very important issues as far as the Belt and Road Initiative of today is concerned. First of all, I have to say that there is no room anymore for going isolated in trade. I mean, no matter what we do, we are connected like never before. So this is a status of our countries that we need to respect today. Furthermore, I do agree with my colleague, the Deputy Minister of Commerce of the People's Republic of China, when he said in his speech that we need to be connected. We really need to start thinking how we get together, not how we go isolated on bilateral level or in compliance with the bilateral agreements. We really need to think how to make it happen jointly on a common, rational rules and principles. And definitely, when talking about One Belt, One Road, when talking about a transportation corridor, we are actually getting not only to these infrastructure issues, to these transportation issues, customs issues, etc. But we are really talking, as Aaron said, about enhancing our social well-being or welfare at the end of our journey. I also have to admit, and it's really sad to say, that yes, Slovakia had been, or has been even today, affected by worsened relationship between Russian Federation and Ukraine. I really have to say that part of, and a big part of our trade, as Slovakia is belonging to very open economies, and I think that it's number 3 within the European Union with the ratio of 85 or 89%, which is giant openness. We really lost more than 40% of our trade exchange with Eastern partners and with our partner Russian Federation. However, not touching the political issues, I would like to announce and inform you about the fact that we have managed, thanks to all the parties involved, thanks to mainly our Chinese colleagues and our Ukrainian neighbors, that we managed to actually get first train, container train from China to Slovakia through the Russian Federation and Ukraine within 16 days. It's I would say it's a corridor that could potentially, and I very much believe it will, serve the exchange of goods, especially agricultural, exchange of the food, which we have a serious problem in the society today, because we have to understand what we get in the shop, it must have been delivered there somewhere. So if we are going to use for vegetables, fruits, and food, the transportation corridors, which are going to, have a duration of more than 40 to 45 days, then we need to understand that at the beginning, we need to pick up the fruit green, not mature, and you know what happens? You load it into the container, and histamine starts to produce. And actually, at the end of the days, we have a beautiful fruit, we have a beautiful vegetables, but what we actually eat is histamine. So how Slovakia can contribute? This is one of the possibilities that we have, And the government of Slovakia is fully aware of the situation, that we can't go isolated, and we are ready to play our role. Thanks to our partners as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dana. While we're on that side, Abdel, why don't you take your 4 minutes stressing that?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you all for being here. As Aaron said, I'm the Assistant Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Our members, as you probably know, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait. Ours is a economically a very dynamic region. Our combined GDP has grown sixfold in the last 15 years, from about $300 billion in 2001 to over $1.7 trillion last year. Also, we have been a trading region for a long time, and a hub for global growth and investment. We have about a dozen sovereign wealth funds whose combined assets exceed $4 trillion, and if you read the news, they're about also probably to be doubled in the near future. They're ready to invest. Much of their funds are ready to invest in mutually beneficial investments. Trade. We have served for thousands of years as a link between Asia, Africa, and Europe. We continue to do that, in addition to the Americas now, and Australia, and New Zealand. Our trade in goods has now exceeded $1.6 trillion. Again, about six-fold increase from 2001, when it was about 280. Investments are difficult to calculate, but they're more than double that. Now, our links with Georgia go back a long way. In fact, 14 centuries. In 645, the Arab Emirate of Tbilisi was established. And for a while, it served as a hub, a commercial and cultural hub in this area. And it continued to do so for a while. After Georgia regained its independence from the Soviet Union, we established again independent links, trade and investment with Georgia. The figures are still modest, but the trade is growing, has grown 30-fold since 2001 to about 300 million. It's still modest, but there's room for growth. Same thing for investment. We're bullish on Georgia, and we're also upbeat about the Belt and Road. Soon after the Chinese government announced the initiative, I had the honor personally and my colleagues to meet with the Chinese officials, including President Xi Jinping in Beijing and in Saudi Arabia. And as I said, since we were for a long time a trading region, served as a link between East and West, we welcomed the initiative, and we are part of the maritime Silk Road, and we are trying to establish also links to the land Silk Road. We have our road networks are quite extensive, and also our rail network is being developed. What is standing between us and reaching the road, the land Silk Road, is the troubled regions of Iraq and Syria. So as soon as peace and stability are restored in those areas, we hope we'll be able to connect by rail and by road to Georgia and to the rest of the Silk Road. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abdel.
Sure.
Are you ready? Let's hear from the World Trade Organization, ladies and gentlemen. Chao Zun, all yours.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and good afternoon, everyone. It's amazing to think about how much progress we have made on trade. In the days of the original Silk Road, traders could travel on average 11 miles a day. But now we have global value chains, and we have just-in-time manufacturing. This is where the Belt and Road Initiative will play a very key role. When implemented fully, this initiative holds the promise of more inclusive road, trade, and stronger connectivity across Asia, Europe, and Africa. However, as we all know, for trade to play its full part, all the right conditions need to be in place. You can have the finest logistics facilities, such as new terminals and container port. But if it takes 80 days to export a container and 100 days to import one, then your country will never be successful in trade. This is where the World Trade Organization comes into play. The newest agreement at the WTO, the Trade Facilitation Agreement, entered into force in February of this year. It aims to streamline, simplify, and standardize import, export, and transit procedures, thereby reducing the time and the cost of moving goods across borders, as well as making it easier for businesses, especially smaller enterprises, to trade and to join global value chains. Estimates show that the full implementation of the agreement could reduce trade costs by an average of around 14.5%. Countries along the new Silk Road will certainly benefit most from its full and speedy implementation. But trade in goods is not the only thing we should cover under this initiative. I would like to mention 3 other areas of discussion at the WTO that, if it is successful, would further strengthen our efforts. First of all, as trade and investment are increasingly indispensable and interlinked engines of global growth, some WTO members have been discussing whether and how the WTO might contribute to facilitate investment flows. Second, as services accounts for almost 50% of the world trade, WTO members are negotiating domestic regulations that would facilitate trade in this area. If successful, it may result in a counterpart agreement of TFA with big reduction of transaction costs associated with unnecessary regulatory burden on trade in services. Third, e-commerce. Between 2013 and 2015, the value of global online trade jumped from $16 to $22 trillion. For small and medium-sized enterprises, e-commerce can significantly lower their costs of doing business across borders. Therefore, many WTO members want to set a path forward in the WTO for the discussion on e-commerce. I think if WTO members work towards full implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement and take active part in this discussion, I believe that they can maximize their benefits from the BRI. So working together, we can ensure that we seize all the tools available in the search for stronger growth and more sustainable development in Georgia, in other countries, and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Big round of applause for our audience. I'm going to come down here now and talk to you from here. Charles, while we're at you, can I just very briefly, in a minute or so, where's the current state of implementation for the agreement?
Well, in WTO, all the developed countries have been implementing TFA in full, and developing countries enjoy some flexibility in design their implementing schedules. And based on our assessment, currently there are 54% of agreement have been implemented globally. That is to say, 53. So that is to say we have 47% implementation to go.
Okay. So some good progress, though, so far, indeed. Kaming, I was going to ask you about the statement that was made at the recent People's Congress in Beijing about, there was a report, it was making new ground in pursuing opening up on all fronts. It's basically, I was going to ask you how the Ministry of Commerce in China is going to have China reach out more to the world. But you've already you touched on that in your 4-minute remark. We'll talk more about it. So while we're talking about the WTO, can I ask you this question? In some countries, it's a bit of a current theme at the moment with one Mr. Trump in the White House. In some countries, there are still protectionist measures. So can I ask you, what role do you think this WTO agreement on trade facilitation will play? Can that pull down some of these protectionist walls?
It's a challenging question. Okay. Okay, I prefer in Chinese. Okay.
Sure, that's why I've got this.
今年2月，这个世贸组织这贸易便利化协定正式生效啊，这确实是一个非常大的一个成绩。这世贸组织多哈回合谈判启动以来首次达成的一个多边货物贸易协定，所以这个中国啊，包括很多国家对这个协定的达成都欢欣鼓舞。我们认为啊，它将进一步简化和协调国际贸易程序，加快这个货物流动，特别是对货物的放行和接关这个速度方面有大幅度的提升，进而进一步促进全球的贸易和投资的增长。这个 WTO 啊，这个我们易小准副总干事啊，是专家，他们有个测算。就是这个协定实施生效以后啊，这个全球贸易这个的成本平均降低14.3%。这个成本的降低呢，将会对全球贸易啊，将会增加1万亿美元的这个出口增长，这个数字还是非常惊人的。所以，这个贸易如果大家都一块共同努力去实施它。在今后对全球的贸易和增长的作用，尤其对目前这个全球经济低迷这状况，推动这个全球经济快速恢复，将有非常大的促进作用。
Okay. Well, I'm glad you mentioned customs because I want to stay on that. Gennady, can I ask you this? Because of course, trade facilitation, including the simplification of customs procedures. Obviously an important tool, of course, to further increase and promote trade among the Belt and Road countries. Just briefly, how is Georgia? How advanced, I guess, is Georgia in that regard?
Thank you for this question. I have not covered this during my opening statement. The trade facilitation is one of the important tools that countries should use when we are talking about the simplification of trade procedures, border procedures. And Georgia is among the countries where was among the first countries who joined the TFA agreement, and also was a champion with that regard of implementing all the commitments which has been undertaken under this agreement. And Georgia has been successfully also reformed the customs and border crossing procedures. With that regard, we have simplified the crossing procedures, border crossing procedures. Also, we have introduced the one-stop shop on borders, which also simplifies the crossing the border, and which also helped to decrease the time of crossing the goods through Georgia, which meant more trade and more transit through Georgia. And we are continuing the reforms process, and we do hope that Georgia, as an attractive transit hub for Asian and European countries, will be as a success story to show them and to share them whatever has been done by Georgia as a reform.
Okay, so Dana, on that point, you've said in the past that it's important for an information exchange, right? Between Slovakia and China when it comes to customs. I'll give you a minute and a half. Can you explain that?
Okay, I will try to do my best, but let me first refer back to what was said by Gennady. It's an illusion if we think that there is going to be only one corridor and one gateway. Okay, this is what we most likely all understand sitting in this room. So it means we really have to find ways how to do it most cost efficiently. Really, we have Ana Hinojosa from WCO, the head of compliance and facilitation here. It is important really to start thinking about how we can enhance the development, how we can stop having all these burdens. And customs issues are really relevant. Just going back to what I said, it was a train, the duration of transit of which was like 16 days from China to Slovakia. If we are going to cooperate, which we have already started with WCO, we can push down the duration of the transit to 10 days, and even less in this corridor between China and Slovakia, the shortest connection between East and West.
How do you do that?
Electronic locks, for example, or electronic seals, or whatever. So firstly, we need to have a clear understanding that we need to have harmonized rules and principles upon which we actually built our domestic legislation. That's the first thing. Second thing, we really need to understand that even if we have different legislations, we may find a way how to harmonize them and simplify them on a working level, you know, at our customs administrations. And plus, if we are able in a very near future to use these electronic devices, gadgets, which accompany the goods and all the documentation and data about origin, value, customs clearance, everything, a country of destination, we will use, that it will enhance not only the safety and security, it will also shorten the working process that is a must, like a customs clearance, but also it massively will contribute to shortening the duration of the transportation as well.
Indeed. Okay, which again, as you say, reduce the cost. Natalia, can I ask you, you painted, you know, we know Ukraine's had a very, very tough time. You painted the numbers. Can you just, again, very briefly, please, because I'm really worried about the clock and we're running out of time and we've got so many questions. The Ukrainian export strategy, I mean, that's obviously key, right? That's a key element of your trade policy. Just tell us more about that, the driving developments, please.
Actually, Ukraine, although geographically situated in the middle of the Europe and on the road from Asia to Europe, never thought strategically about its export, because we had our historic trading partners and nobody actually thought in terms of diversifying our export. Basically, we were trying to sit down and think strategically what are our comparative advantage and what Ukraine can offer to the world. Now Ukraine could become actually the country that could secure a food security for the world. I'm not talking about just, you know, supplying grains. We are good in that. We are number 2. We are number 3 in corn, number 1 in sunflower oil. We are good in actually meat, but our aim is to become, to secure the food security for the world. And this means that we definitely need to have speed, you know, very quick, easy connection to all points in the world, to all our markets. We already supply to about 200 countries all over the world, and therefore, actually, the transit, transportation, and again, simply procedures, very important for Ukrainian economy. Second, our comparative advantage. What we can do, we do not have so many people as are in China or India, but in terms of industrial goods, we can offer to the world cost-efficient, tailor-made, quickly solution with a high quality. What this means? Cost-efficient and quickly solution. It means, again, that we need to have a very efficient system of transportation of those goods either to Europe or to Asia. Therefore, for us, I would say that this trade facilitation and, again, the smooth transportation routes is of tremendous importance. And our export strategy would not work without that.
Indeed. Abdul, I want to come to you, because obviously Georgia is of key interest, and Georgia has made amazing progress. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, in 2013 when Beijing announced the Silk Road and this initiative, Georgia wasn't even mentioned. But you've had this drive and this willingness. You are on the map, a key part of the map of the Belt and Road. So I'm asking you this. You come from a region that's got a lot of money, huh? A lot of money. You're investing in the region. Is Georgia and this region ripe for the picking? Yeah.
There is a lot of potential in Georgia. In February of this year, we signed an agreement with Georgia that has 3 pillars: one political, one trade and investment, and one people-to-people, encouraging people-to-people contacts. So we certainly believe there is a lot of potential here. But I think, as all my colleagues pointed out, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I'll just take the experience within the GCC when it was established in 1981. We started with an FTA and then a customs union. It's hard work. It's not easy. You can remove tariffs by law, but then the non-tariff barriers are difficult. We started in 1981 unifying our standards and measures between the 6 member states, and it still hasn't finished. We have a dedicated organization for that. So to trade or to invest, whether it's in Georgia or elsewhere, we know that it's going to take a lot of work, not just removal or reduction of barriers. And I think protectionism obviously is very appealing domestically. But I think it just reduces the efficiency of any market. And in all our FTA negotiations, this is the difficult part, how to persuade local producers, local constituencies that's in their long-term interest to remove protection. Protection takes so many different ways, of course, other than tariffs, but it's important. We're almost finished with the negotiations with China. It has taken more than 10 years, and protectionism was an issue. With the EU is an issue. So we need to address those things. You can't win everything in a trade negotiations. You cannot be transactional. You cannot win every little battle and every little round. You have to be flexible and look at the overall relationship. And that's what we are looking for in Georgia.
Can I, Charles, can I ask you there, again, if you can, I know it's a horrible thing, but in about a minute and a half, the private sector, what role does the private sector play in advancing the Belt and Road? I mean, I can only imagine it should be huge.
Of course, private sector can play fundamental or key role in promoting BRI. And I don't think without business, the governments will understand the business models and supply chains in the practice. So the business need to educate their governments. And whenever it comes to any important reforms, the politicians, I used to work in the government, I know that the politicians tend to say no. But the business can give them formidable reasons to say yes. So we need business to push.
Okay. Kaming, again, very, very briefly, if you can, we talked about China's willingness. It was mentioned at the People's Congress of opening even more than what it is now. So can you just explain, again, very briefly, about the China International Import Exposition? That's going to offer a lot of opportunities, isn't it?
这个习近平主席在这个今年5月份的“一带一路”峰会上宣布，明年中国将举办进口博览会。大家知道，中国以前主要是着重于以出口为导向的一个发展战略。那么，这个进口博览会将是中国主动对外开放，与全球其他国家，特别是“一带一路”沿线国家。 分享中国快速增长、快速扩大的一个中产阶级阶层和快速扩大的一个 消费品市场的一个主动的一个作为。明年11月份将在上海举办。那么这个博览会呢，既包括国家的综合展，也包括企业展，同时还包括一个贸易论坛。这贸易论坛呢，主要是谈一些这个包括促进贸易自由化和投资便利化，包括推动维护多边贸易体制等等方面的这个一些议程。我们热忱地欢迎各位在座的去参加这个博览会。谢谢大家。
There you go. You got the invite. Thank you. Coming. Dana, before we start wrapping it up, and I'm going to include Gennady on this. Gennady, I have to listen to that clock, don't I? Okay. I have to stick to it.
If you stop speaking, we would have more time.
Dana.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Dana, you said in your opening we need to be more, and I'm asking you this as an outsider, you said we need to be more collective, more interlinked. It's not about competition. But does that actually still exist now? Is that one of the big battles?
Yeah, it does. It does exist. I think I'm a woman. There is a difference how I think. I understand, guys, but sorry for saying that. We need to understand one thing, that this is for everyone a win-win situation. There shouldn't be a situation for someone that is going to be the winning and for someone who is going to lose. So we are in 21st century, so let's stop thinking the old way and let's be updated to a sophisticated 21st century. But going back to the Deputy General Director said, it's very important that we appear in a time when we actually prove that there is the tightest relation ever between the government and the private sector, business. This is exactly the initiative, Belt and Road, which proves that the businesses, they need for some reasons and for legislation purposes, customs purposes, etc., the country's government as well as the government needs the business to push the economic development through. That's the most important message.
Okay. The organisers like usually a brief sum up of the panel session, because the idea of this as well is not just to repeat what we're talking about in 2 years' time. So I'm going to pick on 3 of you to do the summary, to give us 2 key points that you think, not all of you, just 2 key points that you think we need to take forward and are the main targets that we need to focus on. Can I start with you? What do you think we need to take away from this 2 key points, please?
Well, here we are discussing about investment on infrastructure. But I think in order to facilitate trade and investment, we also need soft infrastructure, including WTO trade facilitation agreement, including all the open trade regime and liberal investment regime.
Okay. Gennady, can I ask you as well 2 key points that we need and we can focus that on in 2019?
So 2 key points, and as Georgia also progressed with that, some of the points since 2015, the forum, what happens. This was the first point, was to further liberalize the trade with the partner countries, and we have done so. Since 2015, we have signed the new FTA, free trade agreement with China, so this was very specific, concrete results that we have established good cooperation with China and all of the countries. Georgia enjoys the free trade agreement, so we are proud of it. So this means that we need more free trade agreements, bilateral as well as regional trade agreements, in order to facilitate the trade, to remove the barriers. And another one is to invest in hard infrastructure, as well as in soft infrastructure, as has been highlighted here, because without investing in hard infrastructure, we cannot move fast the goods. And also the soft infrastructure investments are also important, because we need to develop the e-commerce, we need to develop also the electronic clearance systems and so on and so forth. Otherwise, we cannot succeed. Otherwise, we cannot integrate our economies, and it has been also highlighted here that this is the also harmonization of the systems. Without harmonization of the systems, especially the customs systems, we cannot transit the goods faster. And Georgia, with that regard, takes, in Georgia, to cross border takes only 7 minutes. So you can imagine how faster the border crossing procedures are through Georgia.
Okay.
So I think those points are very important in order to facilitate trade between countries.
Thanks, Gennady. Dana, in about 30 or so seconds, if you can, just 2 key points we need to...
Thank you very much. I will stick to only one point. I think that every country in the globe have done or has been doing a lot concerning this Belt and Road Initiative. Everyone's seeing a chance and the opportunity to really be a part of this very strategic project of a millennium, or century, or not even millennium. So I would like to send a message to the audience that we would need to be more organized in this initiative. That's very important. We would need to really distinguish between those really strategic projects and strategic things that we are facing and that we want to realize in the future as a common global initiative. And then we may stick to those which are regionally or important for the regions, for our countries, or bilateral trade relations. So what I actually miss, and that's the end of what I want to say, is kind of an umbrella to understand what is strategic for the globe, how we see it, how we can really implement that into reality, including also how we can finance it, because for some countries smaller, it's very difficult to finance something, even if it has logic and if it is really strategic and even politically strategic project.
Okay, so those points have all been taken down. So let's see, when we raise them, how far we've progressed in the next 2 years when you all gather here again. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our friends on stage, our panelists. Thank you very much.
I think that just to add on it, we will be targeting to GCC countries to sign the next FTA agreement. So this will be as a target for Georgia.
There you go. Okay, thank you.